One of the most important features of any programming language is its ability to share content of one file across multiple files. This feature allows us to reuse the code that is written once and use it in as many places within our application as we need. In the programming environment, you always try to ensure that you do not duplicate code, as it makes it harder to maintain it. If you need to make a change to a specific function that has been declared in a number of places, you'd have to do it for each copy of the given function. Now imagine you had a main file with some code. You then included this file in other files. Now let's say you've added a function called, say, calculate cost to the main file. The moment you save the file, the same function is now available in all those other files that included it. If we need to make a change to the function's logic, we only have to do it in the main file, and it's all automatically reflected across all these other files. In PHP, all this is possible thanks to the following four functions: include, include once, require, and require once. So the first function we are going to look at is going to be the include. In search, we are going to type include, and there we go. So the include statement includes and evaluates the specified file. The documentation below also applies to require. So now we know that include and require are pretty much the same. There's a slight difference, which we will discover in just a moment. Files are included based on the file path given, or if none is given, the include path specified, and if the file isn't found in the include path, then include will finally check in the calling script's own directory and the current working directory before failing. The include construct will emit a warning if it cannot find a file. This is different behavior to the require one, which will emit a fatal error. Okay, let's quickly have a look at this include path. So first link, we're going to open in a new tab. And what does it say? Include path specifies a list of directories where the require, include, fopen, file, read file, and get file get contents functions look for files. The format is like the system's path environment variable, a list of directories separated with a colon in Unix, or semicolon in Windows systems. PHP considers each entry in the include path separately when looking for files to include. It will check the first path, and if it doesn't find it, check the next path until it either locates the included file or returns a warning or error. You may modify or set your include path at runtime using set include path, and we will look at both in just a moment. Let's go back to our include documentation. So if a path is defined where the absolute, which starts with either the drive letter, like for instance on Windows it would be C colon and then backslash. Remember on Windows we have backslashes to separate path directories, and on Unix we have forward slashes. So if it starts with a backslash or C letter or any other drive letter, then that's the absolute path. On Unix, meaning Linux or Mac OS X, we start with a forward slash, or relative to the current directory, which starts with a full stop or two full stops, which means we are trying to go back. For instance, something like this here. We're going up one directory. In the include path, sorry, the include path will be ignored altogether if we obviously find this the file by the absolute or relative path. For example, if a file name begins with the two full stops and the forward slash, the parser will look in the parent directory to find the requested file. For more information on how PHP handles including files and the include path, see the documentation for include path. And we are going to, obviously we've just had a look at this include path. We are going to play a little bit with both of these options. So let's quickly go to our editor. And first of all, what we are going to do is echo get include path. We will see what's on this include path actually. That's PHP comes with. So at the moment we have the current directory, which is a full stop. Then we have a colon because we're on a Unix system, which is Mac OS X. Then we have a / applications mump bin PHP 5.6.10 lib and PHP. This is the path which is basically the mump path to the PHP binary file. So this is what's on the include file. Now, if I was to use the include function now, say include, and I'm just going to specify file.php, which does not, if I open the file browser, in our PHP course directory, we only have index.php. So it's not inside of the same folder, and it certainly is not on the include path. I don't think that we have any file.php under this directory here, PHP. So if I refresh the page, now you can see we have warning, include file, failed to open stream, no such file or directory in users, and so on, index on line 5. And then we have another warning, which is referring to this include path basically. So it says that file opening, failed opening file.php for inclusion on the include path, and obviously include path here matches what we've just echoed in a browser at the top. So basically, first of all, it checks if, when we provided the file, whether this file contains the full path. It obviously didn't, because it was just containing the file name, so it failed for this reason, because the full path didn't match. And then it checked on the include path, which generated the second error because it couldn't find the file on this include path either. If it was to find the file on any of this path, then none of these warnings would be displayed. Now, another thing I want to show you is between the, I'm just going to actually remove this get include path for now, and we have this include file here. So file does not exist. I'm going to echo something, let's say test after inclusion, something like this. If we go back to the browser, refresh the page, we can, as you can see, the warnings have been generated, but the echo was still outputted to the browser. Now, what's going to happen if I change this include to require? And this is where the main difference comes into play. First of all, if I refresh the page, we get the first warning because we couldn't find it on the path, whether it was the absolute or relative. But then for this include path, it generated a fatal error, which is what this documentation says. If we scroll up, the include construct will emit a warning if it cannot find a file. This is different behavior from require, which will emit a fatal error. And this is exactly what we get in the require, generated a fatal error. But what it also does is it terminates the script. At the moment when it fails, nothing after this line will be outputted to the browser. With include, we still saw the rest of the page, the rest of the script basically. So we could see this echo statement. With the require, if it fails, you won't see anything else. That's the termination of the script basically. And whatever's after this line, when we're requiring the file which does not exist, is not going to be outputted to the browser. Let's now remove everything that we have in our index.php file. And what I'm going to do next is inside of the root of our project, let's create a new directory, and I'm going to call it includes. Now, what I'm going to do next inside of our index.php is to simply include, and we are going to include the file, let's say variables.php. And now we know this file doesn't exist anywhere at the moment. It's definitely not on the include path, and it's not inside of our project root directory. So I'm going to create this file actually under this includes directory which we've just created. Obviously, this still is not where we are trying to include it from, because to include it, it would have to be here under this PHP course, because it's at the same level as this index.php. Now, if we want to include it from inside of the includes folder, what we would have to do is to simply use this includes before the variables.php, and now we know you can see straight away that my IDE, which is PHP Storm, doesn't highlight anything, meaning everything is fine. So now this file can be easily obviously included inside of our index.php. So we now have anything that I'm going to put inside of the variables.php is going to be available inside of the index.php. Let's try and create a simple variable, say a. And for a, I'm just going to put, let's say I'm going to associate number 10 with it. So what I can do now is go back to index.php and simply echo a variable. And if I save it all and preview everything in the browser, and there we go, we've got 10. As you can see, now whatever is inside of this variables file is available inside of our index.php. So whatever we put in here, we can include in a number of different pages. And if we need to change any of these values associated with the variable or any function or anything else, we only have to change it in one place. We don't have to go through file and then another file which uses a similar functionality and so on. It's only one place, then you include it and it's all available. Okay, now let's have a look at another example. Say we didn't want to use this includes all the time in our include statement. Okay, there is an easy way to sort it out. And the way to do it is to set include path. Before we use get include path, when we echoed this get include path, if I just use it like this, save it and preview everything in the browser, refresh the page, you can see we get this full stop, which is a current directory, and then we have colon, which separates directories, and we get this PHP binary directory as well on the map of the map. And then we obviously get these warnings, but don't worry about them for now. So we have get include path, where we can actually return the current include path separated by colon on the Unix systems. On Windows, you will have a semicolon as a separator for all these. And to set include path, because we can also do this, what we are going to do is use the implode function, which we've used before. And as a separator, we are going to use the constant called path separator. And what path separator is, it's very similar a constant to the directory separator. Path separator is basically the constant that returns the value that separates paths inside of this include path. In our case, because we are on a Unix system, which is Mac OS X, we will have a colon. So if I'm just going to comment all this actually, just to show you what it's going to return if we just use this constant. Let's just comment it all. And if I just echo, obviously lowercase, and path separator, go to the browser, refresh the page, and there we go. You see, colon. If you are on Windows, you should see semicolon. So path separator returns the right path separator basically for your system. If I just uncomment all this, and now, so we are trying to implode the following. I'm going to use the current directory and then directory separator, which is going to be either / or / depending on whether you're on Unix or Windows system, and then the directory name, which is includes. So includes, obviously lowercase, and there we go. And then what I want to do is I want to combine it with the existing include path. So I want to add to it, but I'm adding obviously this new path to the beginning of the path. So right at the beginning, it's going to check whether this directory exists. And then it's going to take the existing include path by calling this get include path. And basically all this is going to be combined. But one thing that I've forgotten to do here is to wrap both of these values inside of the array, because this is obviously this implode function uses the separator, basically the glue, which is gluing this path, whatever is going to divide all these items inside of the array. So these two items, obviously different items of the array, and we are gluing them with this colon or semicolon on Windows, obviously using this implode function. So now this, after setting this include path, if I try and echo get include path, now I'm going to comment this include statement here, but as you can see, now it added this path to the include folder, which is uses Sebastian desktop PHP course includes, to the include path. So now we have this one is the first item, then we have a current directory, which is a full stop, and then we have applications basically, and so on, down to the PHP's binary of the MAMP installation. So we've got 1, 2 and 3 paths on the include path at the moment. So when we are including something, it will first check, obviously, if you provide the full path as the argument to this include function, then we'll first check this location of the file. And after this failed, it will check first in this directory. Does this file exist in here? Does this file exist in the current directory? And does this file exist in this directory? If it doesn't, then we're gonna get either fatal error with require or include, we're going to get a warning. So let's now try and include this variables.php. Still highlighting, my ID is still highlighting because it's not aware of the basically paths on the include path. But if we save it and preview it in a browser, you can still, obviously, hold on a second, let me just go back one. We don't need this echo statement here. Obviously, our variables only have this variable assignment, but it doesn't echo anything here. But if I save it and preview everything in browser, we're gonna get a blank page. That means we don't have any error, which would indicate that the file has been included successfully. What I can do now is just use this, just echo this a variable, preview it in a browser, and there we go, we get 10. So as you can see, if we go back to our editor, we could obviously use the full stop / includes, and that would work as well. We could remove this full stop and /, that would work as well, because it's going to go directly from the current directory where the file from which we are actually calling this include function is located, and then to this include directory and call the variables. It's either way. We've got relative path, we could use absolute path. If I just quickly echo get include path and preview it in a browser, we could use all this as well. So if I just go back, so this would work as well. I can obviously remove this echo statement here. That will work the same way. As you can see, everything works fine. We can either use it this way, full stop / and then includes, or just directly includes. But because obviously full stop / indicates we are inside of the current directory, which for this index.php is this PHP course, and whatever else we put after this. So / includes obviously, and then the variables.php. Or we could also, now that we've added this include directory to the include path, we could simply use variables.php, because this directory is already on the include path, so it's going to find this variables.php anyway.